I'm going to read this story to you, and so bear with me. And it's about Chippy the parakeet. And Chippy never saw it coming. Okay? One second he was peacefully perched in his cage. The next he was sucked in, washed up, and blown over. The problem began when Chippy's owner decided to clean Chippy's cage with a vacuum cleaner. She removed the attachment from the end of the hose and stuck it in the cage. And as she did that, the phone rang. And she turned to pick it up. She'd barely said hello when swoop, Chippy was sucked in, right? The bird owner gasped, put down the phone, and turned off the vacuum and opened the bag, and there was Chippy. He was still alive, but he was stunned, right? Since the bird was covered with dust and soot, she grabbed him and raced to the bathroom and turned on the faucet and held Chippy underneath the faucet of that running water. Then she realized, oh no, Chippy is shivering with cold, right? And he's wet, he's soaked. So she did what any sane person would do and compassionate person. She reached for the hairdryer and held that and blasted the hot air all over Chippy. Poor Chippy never knew what hit him. A few days after the trauma, the reporter who'd initially written about the event contacted Chippy's owner to see how the bird was recovering. Well, she replied, Chippy doesn't sing much anymore. He just sits and stares. It's hard not to see why, right? Sucked in, washed up, and blown over. That's enough to steal the song in any stout heart, right? The truth is, we all go through difficult times, difficult and even scary situations in life, times where we experience real fear. It may be a life-threatening diagnosis. It may be a financial crisis. It may be losing your job, unexpected bills. It may be a relational crisis in your marriage or a family member. We all go through difficult times. How do we get through these dark and scary times? How do we get through these dark and scary times with courage and strength? How do we not turn into whimpering, sobbing messes? How do we not lose our sanity? How do we not lose our faith? The title of this sermon is No Fear. And it's based on Psalm 23. And that was written by David, King David, and describes the kind of leader that God is for his people. In Psalm 23, verse 4, David reveals something. He reveals what he does when he faces those terrifying times in life. David wrote this psalm from the perspective of a sheep. From a perspective of a sheep talking about his shepherd. And the shepherd represents God. This is how David saw God, as a loving, caring shepherd. And this is what he says. We're going to kind of go step by step through this verse, but many of you know this psalm. It says this: even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. I'm going to pause there because I want to talk about this. This is what he's saying. He says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. This is a picture of a flock of sheep being led through a dark and dangerous valley. Let me tell you something about dark valleys. Dark valleys are impartial. No one is immune to a dark valley. It doesn't matter who you are. No one escapes problems of life. If you are a Christian, you're going to face problems in your life. You're going to face dark valleys. If you're a good person or a bad person or whatever, you're going to face, if you're rich or you're poor, you're going to face dark valleys. No one is immune. Something else about dark valleys. Dark valleys are unavoidable. They are going to happen in life. You may be coming out of one, you may be in the middle of one, or you may be headed for one, but they are unavoidable. Unavoidable. But here's something to hold on to. Dark valleys are temporary. They have an end. They don't last forever. When you're in a dark valley, sometimes we think instead of a valley, we're in a cave with no end. But we're not. Dark valleys are like a tunnel. There's always a light at the other end. Troubles in your life don't come to stay, they come to pass. Dark valleys have an end. They're temporary. Something else to hold on to is that dark valleys have a purpose. God has a reason for taking you through dark valleys. Every problem has a purpose. They're there to help shape you. As metal is put into the fire to make it pliable, so we go through problems in life to shape our character. The fire builds our character, shapes our character. How do you know if you will be faithful unless you're faced with opportunities for compromise? How do you know how much endurance you have until you're put to the test? You're exhausted. You're put to your limit. How are you going to know how much endurance you have? How is your endurance going to grow unless that happens? How do you know if you can trust God in difficult times unless you go through difficult times? God's goal in life is not to make you comfortable. His goal in life is to build your character. He is preparing you for eternity. So we are going to go through dark valleys in life. But here's the question: how should we handle these dark valleys? How do we handle them when we go through them? Well, David gives us the answer, and it's in the next part of the verse. He says this. So let me just reread what I read before. It says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, it says this: I will fear no evil, for you are with me. The words "I will" mean it is a matter of choice. You have a choice. Are you going to be afraid or not? Are you going to give in to that fear or not? He says, I will fear no evil. I will overcome this problem with God's help. One of the biggest adjustments you and I need to make when we go through problems is an attitude adjustment. Refuse to be discouraged. Refuse to give in to fear. I will not be afraid. I refuse to be shaking in my boots. I will walk through this valley. But there's a reason why you should refuse to be discouraged. Look at the next phrase in that verse. For you are with me. That's why we don't need to be afraid. Because God is with us. Verse 4, there's a change in the language. Up to this point, all the pronouns are in third person. He leads me, He guides me, He restores my soul. But all of a sudden, the language changes from third person to second person. You are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. All of a sudden, the ultimate becomes the intimate. All of a sudden, religion becomes relationship. David didn't draw away from God in a dark valley. He drew closer to Him. And that's exactly what you and I need to do. We need to draw closer to God, not further away. Because it's with Him that we have the strength to face the dark valley. It's because of Him that we don't need to be afraid. David got more intimate. We need to lean on God, rely on His presence. The very presence of God is a comfort. Draw closer to him, not further away. In fact, listen, I came up with a little rhyme here that can help you to remember this. That if you want to go through a dark valley, you need to draw closer to God, not further away. No, let me rephrase that. If you want to go through a dark valley, if you're going through a dark valley, draw closer to him, not further away. Here's what I want you to, would you repeat this after me? Put it up on the screen if you would. When God is near, there's no reason to fear. Let's say it together, shall we? When God is near, there's no reason to fear. That needs to become a reality in your life. Because as I said, sometimes we're here because of a religion, not a relationship. But can I just tell you something? A religion is not going to give you the faith and the strength to face that dark valley. Just following a bunch of rules, a bunch of do's and don'ts, which is what a religion is not enough. You need to have a relationship with God. You need to draw closer to him. And as you draw closer to him, he gives you the strength. He gives you the faith. He gives you the comfort to face whatever it is, whatever that dark valley is. Draw close to him, because when God is near, there's no reason to fear. You know why we don't need to fear when we are on God's side, when God is close to us? Because God is bigger than anything we face. You know what's interesting is evil will never win the war. Did you know that? Evil will never win the war. It may seem like it's winning at times, but in the end, it will always lose to God. Evil will never overcome God. And when you are on God's side, you will become undefeated. Because nothing defeats God. There is nothing that you face that is bigger than God. There is nothing that you face that God says, man, I can't handle that. You're on your own. It doesn't work that way. God is bigger. Evil will never win. So when God is on our side, when we are on God's side, we know that we will not be defeated. David continues in the psalm to describe why he trusts God during these dark valleys and why we should as well. He says this, he goes on to say, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You know what the rod was? Why the shepherd had a rod and why he had a staff? The rod was there as a tool for defending the sheep. When a wolf or any animal, a lion or whatever would come to attack the sheep, the shepherd would defend the sheep with that rod. It was a tool to defend them. God is more than capable of protecting you from whatever may come. As I said already, we've been facing some incredibly weird times. I've never gone through this before in my life. And I don't think any of you have either. But God is bigger. And he can protect us through this. You know what I want to encourage you to do is I want you to think about this as an opportunity for you to minister to other people. Because as I've already mentioned, you guys have been to Winco, you've been to Walmart, you've been to these other stores, and it's crazy out there, right? It's crazy because people are panicking because they don't have a God that they can lean on. But you do. Show them what that looks like. Trust him yourself. You know, my son and I, we actually went to like 5 different stores. We were trying to find some hand sanitizer for the church, because we're a church. A lot of people are coming through here. We got to have a little bit of hand sanitizer. We weren't going to have stockpiles of it. We just wanted a little bit for the church. Went to 5 stores, couldn't find any. we were like, but what was interesting, we went to Walmart, and while we were walking around, they came out with a pallet of water. And they put it in the middle of the aisle, and boy, it was just like vultures, man. People were just grabbing this stuff and dumping it in the cart. And Caleb was just like laughing because he's like, it used to be like this high, and by in a few seconds, a minute or something, it was like half gone. You know, it was just like, he was just like, whoa, it's crazy, right? Because people are panicking. We got to do something. We got to. They think they have to take care of this themselves. They got to protect themselves. And I'm not saying we shouldn't take precautions, but they're going overboard because they don't have any source of strength. They don't believe in a God who can take care of them, who can see them through this. Show them what that looks like. Don't you be one of those people that's panicking. Trust in the God that you serve, that He can take care of you through this coronavirus or whatever else you may be facing. He is bigger than anything that you face. The staff was used to guide the sheep. The rod was there to defend them, but the staff was there to guide the sheep. Often the staff would have a hook on it. Many of you have seen that, a picture of a shepherd, and you have a hooked staff. You're kind of like, why in the world would they have that? That hook was often to grab the sheep around the neck and guide them back to where the shepherd was and where the flock was heading, right? It was kind of just a way, hey, you're getting out of the line there, pal. Get over here, right? It was a way to guide the sheep, to help them stay close to Him. I think what's amazing about this is that the shepherd, in this, what David is saying here is that the shepherd is leading the sheep into this dark valley. Think about that for a moment. Why in the world would he do that? Why are the sheep comforted when the shepherd is leading them into this dark valley? Because they know the shepherd is a good shepherd and he loves his sheep. He would never lead them somewhere that would harm them. They trust him. God is leading us through this dark valley. Do we trust him? Are we comforted as we go through this, knowing that God has our best interest at heart? And no matter what we face, He's going to take care of it. God always knows which direction is best. If He is leading you, then you have nothing to fear, even though it seems dark. Not only that, but do you see that the shepherd is going with the sheep through the dark valley? He's not saying, hey, there's a dark valley, head on in. I'm going to stay out here. He's walking with the sheep right through that dark valley. Whatever they face, He faces. They can count on His help and His protection. Listen to what Jesus said to His disciples in Matthew 28:20. This is when He was leaving to go up to heaven after He'd been resurrected. And He says this, and be sure of this, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. God has never left us. Jesus is always with us. No matter what we face, He's here. And you can trust Him. You can rely upon Him. You don't need to be afraid. He's our good shepherd. Even though God allows us to go through dark valleys, He is with us. God always knows what direction is best. If He's leading you, then you have nothing to fear. He will never allow those dark valleys or whatever is in those valleys to defeat us. I don't know what you're facing today. I know what you're facing with this virus, but I don't know if maybe there's something else in your life that you're facing as well. But you can trust in God. Put your faith and your trust in him. Don't look at these circumstances and start panicking. Say, God, how do you want me to walk through this valley? How can I trust you through this dark valley? How can I minister to my neighbor or to my coworkers or to my friends who don't know you, who don't have you to rely on? How can I help them to know that there is a God in heaven who loves them? And if they'll put their trust in him, he will protect them too. He will watch over them. When God is near, there's no reason to fear.